There is a kind of wisdom that only arrives after you have lived long enough to understand what sharing has cost you. Not the sharing of possessions, not the sharing of time or effort or love. Those things are different. I mean the sharing of your interior life. The sharing of your plans before they are ready, your fears before you have faced them yourself, your private victories before they have rooted, your regrets before you have made peace with them, your financial reality before you know who is truly on your side. That kind of sharing, which we are taught from childhood to regard as closeness, as the mark of trusting relationships, as the evidence of a family that has no walls between its members, that kind of sharing can undo you in ways that take years to understand and longer still to recover from. I have lived past 70, and one of the clearest things that age has given me is the understanding that certain things belong only to me, not because I am hiding, not because I do not love the people around me, not because I am suspicious or guarded or closed, but because I have finally learned after all these years that some things are too important, too fragile, too genuinely mine to survive the journey into someone else's hands. And I want to share those things with you today, not the secrets themselves, which are yours and not mine to name, but the categories, the 5 territories of your interior life that, after 70, belong to no one but you, not to your children, not to your oldest friend, not to the sibling who has known you since before you could form sentences, not to anyone, because the people who love you are not always the people who can hold what you carry. And learning to know the difference between the two is one of the most important lessons a long life can teach. The first secret you must never share after 70 is the true state of your finances. I say this knowing that it cuts against everything most families believe about themselves. We tell ourselves that we are the kind of family that is open about money, that we have no secrets, that our children have always known what we have and what we do not have, and perhaps that was appropriate when the children were young and the family was a unit with shared stakes. But you are past 70 now, and the situation has changed in ways that the sentiment of family openness does not account for. Your children are adults with their own financial pressures, their own mortgages, their own anxieties about money, their own children to raise and educate and provide for, and when you share the full picture of what you have, whether that picture shows more than they expected or less, you introduce something into every subsequent interaction that was not there before. If you have more than they imagined, the dynamic shifts. Not always dramatically, not necessarily with conscious intention on anyone's part, but it shifts. Decisions about their own lives begin to factor in what they believe is coming to them eventually. Requests appear that would not have appeared otherwise. A subtle repositioning happens in how they relate to you because they are now, whether they admit it or know it, relating to you partly as the holder of something they are waiting to inherit. And if you have less than they imagined, a different shift happens. A particular kind of concern appears that is tangled up with relief and guilt and calculation in ways that are invisible from the outside but deeply felt by you. You become someone who might need something from them, and that changes the texture of their presence in ways that are very difficult to undo. Keep the full picture of your finances to yourself. Work with a financial advisor, an estate attorney, a certified professional who has no personal stake in what you decide. Communicate what is necessary for practical purposes. But the whole truth, the actual numbers, the actual plans, the actual provisions you have made or not made, those belong to you and to your professional advisors and to no one else. The peace this gives you is not a small thing. It is the peace of knowing that every relationship in your life is based on you and not on what you have. The second secret you must never share after 70 is the specific content of your regrets. Every life past 70 carries regrets. That is not a personal failing. It is the arithmetic of a long life, which accumulates decisions and their consequences over decades, and which contains, in anyone who has lived with any real engagement, choices made under imperfect information that turned out badly, roads not taken that glitter now in retrospect with a light they did not have at the time, relationships handled wrongly, moments missed, words said that should not have been said, and words swallowed that should have been spoken. Regret is universal. The question is not whether you have it. The question is who you share it with and what happens when you do. When you share your deep regrets with family, you are giving them something they do not know what to do with. If your regret involves a choice that affected them, sharing it reopens something that may have been quietly closed, and the reopening rarely serves either of you. If your regret is about a path not taken, a life not lived, an alternative self you sometimes grieve, sharing it asks the people who built their lives assuming you were content to suddenly reframe everything they believed about your interior experience. And if your regret involves other people in the family, living or dead, you are releasing something into a system that will carry it in ways you cannot predict or control. The appropriate place for deep regret is not in your family's living room. It is in the quiet of your own reflection, where you can sit with it honestly, understand what it is telling you, and eventually arrive at something that is not forgiveness exactly, but closer to comprehension. The understanding that you made the choices you made with the person you were at the time, with the information you had, under the pressures that existed, and that the person who made those choices was doing the best they could with what they had. That arrival is private work. It cannot be done in public. And sharing the regret before doing that work simply distributes the weight without reducing it. There is also this: the regrets you share become stories that other people tell. They take on a life in the family narrative that is no longer under your control. The thing you said once in a vulnerable moment becomes the thing that is remembered and repeated and interpreted by people who were not inside your experience when you spoke it. Keep your regrets close. Sit with them honestly. Let them teach you what they have to teach, and then let them become part of the private bedrock of your own self-knowledge, which does not require an audience to be real. The third secret you must never share after 70 is what you have decided about the end of your life. I mean this in its fullest sense. Your wishes about medical intervention, your feelings about how much treatment is enough, and at what point enough becomes too much. Your private sense of what a good death looks like and what you are and are not willing to endure in the name of a few more months. Your relationship with your own mortality, which by this age has become something you have actually thought about, actually sat with, actually developed some kind of honest position on, even if that position is uncomfortable for the people who love you to hear. These things need to be communicated in their practical dimensions. A living will prepared with an attorney handles the legal requirements. A healthcare proxy designates someone to make decisions if you cannot make them yourself. An advance directive specifies your wishes in clinical terms that can be honored by medical professionals. Those documents are essential and they should exist, and the person you designate should know they exist and where to find them. That is the practical layer, and it is not what I am telling you to keep secret. What I am telling you to keep secret is the interior of your relationship with your own mortality. The thoughts you have at 3 in the morning about what it will be like. The fears that visit and the unexpected peace that sometimes arrives alongside them. The private accounting you do of what you have done and what you have left undone and whether the balance feels right to you. The particular quality of your own coming to terms, which is a process that belongs entirely to you and that other people's anxiety will interrupt if you let them into it too soon. When you share these interior experiences with family, you trigger something in them that is about them, not about you. Their fear of losing you, their need to believe that everything will be fine. Their discomfort with the subject itself, which in our culture is enormous and almost universal. And the result is that your honest interior process gets crowded out by their responses to it. You end up managing their fear instead of doing your own work. You end up reassuring them instead of sitting with your own truth. Keep this territory private. Do the work in it that it requires. And trust that the peace you eventually find there will express itself in your face and your manner and your way of being with the people you love without requiring explanation. The fourth secret you must never share after 70 is the true nature of your relationships with each of your children. If you have more than one child, you know already what I am describing. The relationship you have with each of them is different, not because you love one more than another, that is almost never the truth, but because each relationship has its own history, its own texture, its own specific dynamic built from decades of particular interactions and misunderstandings and repairs and ongoing negotiations. You know which child understands you most naturally. You know which one tries harder than the others and still somehow misses. You know which relationship carries old weight that has never been fully addressed and probably never will be. You know which one you call when you are genuinely struggling and which one you call when you want someone to make you laugh. These distinctions are real. They are the truth of your actual emotional life, not a fairy tale of equal devotion distributed identically in all directions. But they must not be spoken, not to any of the children about the others, not to your spouse if they will share what you say, not to any extended family member who sits at the same table as your children at holidays and carries information the way leaking vessels carry water, which is everywhere and without control. The reason is simple. What you say in an honest moment becomes a permanent fact in someone else's mind. If you tell one child that another is the one you feel closest to, you have given both of them something they will carry forever. Something that will color every subsequent interaction with each other and with you. Even said gently. Even said in a context of genuine closeness. Even said with every intention that it stays between you. It will not stay between you. These things never do. And the damage they do to the fabric of a family, to the story the family tells itself about what it is very difficult to repair. Your interior truth about your children is yours to know and yours to navigate privately. The practical expression of love, your time and your attention and your interest and your presence can be distributed in whatever way your honest feelings guide. But the feelings themselves, the comparative ones, the ones that make distinctions, belong only to you. The fifth secret you must never share after 70 is the private vision of the life you wished you had lived. This is different from regret, which looks backward at specific choices. This is something more fundamental. It is the dream self, the parallel self, the person you sometimes sense you might have been under different circumstances, the artist who never made art, the traveler who never left, the person who might have chosen an entirely different partner, an entirely different path, an entirely different country or vocation or way of being in the world. If the circumstances had aligned differently, if the courage had arrived earlier, if the weight of expectation had not been so heavy when the decisive moments came. Almost every person past 70 carries some version of this. It is not ingratitude for the life actually lived. It is not rejection of the people and choices that made that life. It is simply the natural result of being a complex human being with an imagination wide enough to conceive of more than one version of yourself. The unlived life is real. It lives somewhere in the imagination, always somewhat vivid, always somewhat haunting, impossible to fully dismiss, and it must not be shared. Not with your children, who will hear it as a commentary on their own existence, who will wonder whether you regret the choices that produced them, who will carry forward the belief that the life they are part of was somehow the second choice. Not with your spouse, living or in memory, because the unlived life that features a different partner is a particular cruelty to bring into the open, even in the most trusting relationship. Not with friends, who will not know what to do with it and who will store it imperfectly and retrieve it at the wrong moments. The unlived life belongs to the private space of your imagination, where it can exist without damage, where it can even be a source of quiet richness, a reminder that you were always larger than any single path could contain. Some people find that writing about it, privately and with no intention of sharing, gives it somewhere to live that is not the constant low-level pressure of an unexpressed thing. A journal that no one will read, a letter written to the self you might have been. These acts are not indulgence. They are a form of honest living, a way of acknowledging the full truth of who you are without allowing that truth to become a weapon in anyone else's hands. I want to say something carefully now, because I know that what I have described might sound to some ears like a prescription for isolation, like a recommendation to close yourself off, to withhold yourself from the people who love you, to become harder and more guarded and less present in the relationships that matter most to you. That is not what I am saying. I want to be very clear about that. The 5 things I have described are not your whole self. They are the interior foundations of yourself, the bedrock layer that is no one's business but yours. On top of that foundation, an enormous amount of genuine sharing is not only possible but necessary. Your daily experience, your observations about the world, your humor, your tenderness, your grief when it arrives, your delight in small things, your memories selected and shaped into the stories that tell your family who you have been and therefore who they come from, your honest opinions about the things that deserve honest opinions, your love, expressed in whatever language feels true, all of that remains. None of that belongs to the category of what I am asking you to protect. The 5 secrets I have named are the ones that, in my long experience of watching what happens when they are shared, tend to cause damage that was never intended and create distance that was never desired and shift relationships in ways that are very difficult to shift back. They are the ones that belong for the rest of your life to the private interior that is yours alone, the space that no one else can enter and that no one else needs to enter for you to love them fully and be loved by them in return. You have spent more than 7 decades learning to know yourself. You have accumulated in that time a private world of extraordinary complexity and depth, full of things that took those 7 decades to understand, and that cannot be adequately translated into words that other people, however loving, will receive the way you intend. Some of what you know is not for sharing. Some of what you have lived is not a story for someone else to carry. Some of who you are belongs entirely and permanently and unapologetically to you. Knowing that, accepting that, living from that understanding rather than against it, that is not closing yourself off from the world. That is arriving at the most honest and complete version of yourself that you have ever been. It is knowing the difference between intimacy and exposure, between love and oversharing, between the warmth of genuine connection and the false intimacy of telling everything to everyone in the hope that transparency will create closeness that only time and trust can actually build. Keep these 5 things close, not as secrets born of shame, but as treasures born of a long life that finally knows its own worth. The people who love you do not need to know everything to love you well, and you do not need to give everything away to be fully present in the life you still have left to live. Some things are yours. Let them stay that way.